Two names echo in every trader's mind, Livermore and Douglas. One mastered the market through control. The other mastered himself through surrender. Their battle isn't history, it's you. Every time you click that button, both of them awaken. Livermore stands behind your shoulder, eyes sharp, breath steady, craving precision. Douglas watches from the shadows, silent, calm, unmoved by the noise. And between them stands you, the trader who wants to win but can't decide which god to serve, control or peace. Because Livermore whispers, dominate the trend, time it, ride it, break it before it breaks you. And Douglas answers, you can't dominate what you don't accept. This is not a battle of men, it's a war of mindsets. One fights for power, the other dissolves into clarity. And every chart, every candle, every heartbeat between entries decides which side you feed. Livermore is the fire in you, the hunger to turn logic into victory. The belief that if you just study harder, refine deeper, push longer, you'll conquer the randomness. He believes the market is a beast that rewards the brave. That pain is proof of pursuit. That control is strength. Douglas, he's the mirror. He looks at the same chaos and smiles. He believes the market is truth in motion, never tamed, never personal. That losses are not punishment. Their feedback. That control is illusion, and surrender is precision. And you, standing in the middle, feel both pulling you apart. One side screams, you're not working hard enough. The other whispers, you're not letting go enough. And somewhere between those two voices, your balance burns. Every trader meets this clash. Some never realize it has a name. They think their problem is timing. They think their problem is strategy. But the truth, their problem is identity. Because every trade you take is a mirror of who you believe you are. Livermore trades from the ego. He must prove he's right. Douglas trades from awareness. He must only see what is. Both make money. Both lose it. But only one sleeps at night. Livermore is the rush of conquest, the feeling when your setup hits and you feel invincible. He feeds on momentum, thrives on control. He is every trader's dream version of themselves, the genius who sees the market before it moves. But he's also the ghost of perfection, the voice that never lets you rest. Because even when you win, he whispers, could have held longer, could have done better. Douglas is the opposite energy, the silence after the storm. He doesn't chase, he doesn't hope, he simply aligns. Where Livermore wants to master price, Douglas wants to master perception. Livermore cuts through noise with aggression. Douglas dissolves it through acceptance. So when the market opens, who do you become? When the candles turn red, does Livermore rise, ready to fight, or does Douglas breathe, ready to observe? Most traders spend years trying to silence one voice. But that's where they lose. Because mastery isn't choosing between control and surrender. It's knowing when to shift between them. There are moments when the Livermore within you must strike. Decisive, bold, unshaken. And moments when Douglas must take the wheel, patient, detached, still. Power without peace becomes self-destruction. Peace without power becomes stagnation. Balance is the hidden edge, you see. The market doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards emotional alignment. And that's the secret both Livermore and Douglas were trying to teach. Just from opposite sides of the same coin. One said, master your craft. The other said, master your mind. The truth, you need both. But before you can unite them, you must face them. You must watch them fight inside you. Every trade, every reaction, every click. The perfectionist and the monk. The fighter and the observer. Both right, both dangerous. The candles flicker, and your heart matches their rhythm. You feel the pulse of greed, the itch of fear, the illusion of control tightening around your chest. Livermore's voice rises. You can fix this. Take the next trade. Prove the market wrong. Douglas counters. You don't need to fix what's not broken. Let it unfold. Watch yourself. And there, between impulse and awareness, lies the space where all great traders are born. Not when they find the right setup, but when they find silence inside the chaos. That silence, that's Douglas. That drive to conquer, that's Livermore. You were built with both for a reason. Because the market doesn't test your knowledge. It tests your relationship with uncertainty. And in that test, Livermore fights to control it. Douglas surrenders to it. But mastery is when you dance with it. So ask yourself, when you sit before the screen tomorrow, when price moves against you, when your plan breaks, when your emotions flare, who will rise first? Will you become Livermore, the tactician, the controller, the one who believes the market bends to discipline? Or Douglas, the observer, the one who understands the market bends to awareness? Because this battle isn't happening on the charts. It's happening inside you. The candles only reflect which side is winning. Livermore teaches you to act. Douglas teaches you to see. Livermore teaches you to risk. Douglas teaches you to release. And the trader who learns to blend them, who learns when to strike, when to surrender, that's the one who doesn't just trade the market, he trades time itself. This is where your journey begins. not in setups or signals, but in understanding the two voices within you. One built your ambition. The other will build your freedom. Livermore vs. Douglas. Control vs. surrender. Fear vs. flow. Noise vs. clarity. They are not rivals, they are coordinates. Find the line between them and you'll find yourself. You chase entries. You fear exits. You scroll, refresh, swear, promise. You call it analysis. But it's survival. Every trader says they have a plan, but deep down, it's panic disguised as discipline. You wake up checking charts before you even check your pulse. You breathe in price action, exhale anxiety. You promise yourself, today will be different. Today I'll wait. Today I'll stay calm. But then the candles move, and your heart starts sprinting before your mind even leaves the gate. You draw lines, you shift timeframes, you convince yourself that what you feel is insight. But it's not. It's reaction. You're not trading data, you're trading dopamine. Every tick up feeds your ego. Every tick down cuts your identity, and between those ticks your sanity bleeds. You tell yourself you're following strategy, but really you're chasing certainty. You think control means clicking faster, analyzing deeper, knowing more. But knowledge without calm is chaos with a name tag. The screen becomes a mirror of your mood. Green candles make you feel like a genius. Red ones make you question your existence. You call it volatility. It's not. It's vulnerability. You're not watching the market, you're watching yourself collapse in real time. You refresh every second. Like pain will turn into clarity if you just look hard enough. You zoom out, zoom in, move stop loss, move it again. You check your P&L like it owes you validation. You whisper, just one good trade, as if begging the market is part of the strategy. This isn't trading. This is survival in disguise. Every candle triggers a thought, every thought triggers an emotion, every emotion triggers an action, and you call that a method. But it's not a method, it's a loop. A perfectly designed emotional treadmill that never stops spinning until you fall. You've built a cage out of your own expectations. Every loss feels personal. Every win feels temporary. You've forgotten that the market doesn't even know your name. It doesn't punish. It doesn't reward. It simply reflects. But reflection hurts when you don't like what you see. The noise outside, the charts, the alerts, the numbers, is nothing compared to the noise inside. The voice that says, you're missing it. The whisper that says, you should have held. The echo that says, you're not good enough. That's not analysis. That's addiction. Addiction to movement. Addiction to meaning. Addiction to control. You chase entries not because they make sense, but because waiting makes you feel powerless. You exit too early not because the setup failed, but because patience feels like pain. You swear at the screen not because the market betrayed you, but because your emotions did. You keep refreshing not to see change, but to feel alive. You think trading gives you freedom, but you're chained to your own impulses. You're not trading the market anymore, you're trading relief. The relief of not being wrong. The relief of being right just long enough to breathe. The relief of feeling in control for 5 seconds before the next candle breaks your illusion again. You call this game strategy. Douglas would call it resistance. Livermore would call it fuel. Because this is where both men live. Inside the noise, Livermore thrives in it. He feeds off the chaos. To him the noise is rhythm, the randomness is opportunity. He believes control can turn panic into profit. He fights the uncertainty with aggression, forcing order into disorder. He's the part of you that can't rest. The part that wants to win even when the game makes no sense. The part that believes domination is safety. But Douglas, he sees the same storm differently. To him, the noise isn't an enemy, it's information. He listens to it without letting it move him. He knows that the chaos outside only exists because there's chaos within. He doesn't mute it, he observes it, and that's where power hides. In stillness that can hear the storm and stay unmoved. But you're caught between them. You're fighting Livermore's fire with Douglas's calm, and you're losing both. Because you can't be both at once while you're still reacting. You can't master the chart if you can't master your breath. You can't read patterns if you're blinded by pressure. You can't win a game that's being played inside your head while your eyes are glued to the screen. Every trader has felt it. The rush, the spiral, the noise that never ends. The inner arena where logic dies and emotion wears a suit that looks like reason. You tell yourself, this setup makes sense. But what you mean is, this setup will make me feel in control again. You don't trade charts. You trade emotion management disguised as technicals. You tell yourself you're disciplined because you journal. But the truth is you're documenting chaos. Every page filled with rules broken by impulse. Every note pretending patience can be forced. Every lesson learned. Forgotten the moment your next trade goes red. You can't outlearn emotional noise. You can only outgrow it. But that requires silence. And silence is terrifying when your identity feeds on action. The irony. The more you chase control, the more control you lose. You think you're fighting the market. You're not. You're fighting your own biology, adrenaline, fear, hope, desperation. The human nervous system trying to predict something that doesn't need prediction. Just observation. You trade to escape uncertainty, but uncertainty is the only constant. You want security in a system built to test it. You want peace in a world designed to challenge it. And yet, the deeper truth is this: it's not the market that's loud. It's you. The market is just data, neutral, silent, pure. The noise lives in your interpretation of it, in your emotional story about what each candle means. You turn price into judgment. You turn red into regret. You turn randomness into revenge. And in doing so, you stop being a trader. You become a narrator of chaos. Livermore screams through you. Move, act, do something, fight back. Douglas listens. Pause, breathe, watch it pass. Both voices are right. Both are dangerous when alone. Because without Livermore, you'd never take risk. Without Douglas, you'd never survive it. The goal isn't to mute either voice. It's to hear both and choose consciously. But most traders never get that far. They drown in the noise. They mistake reaction for control, motion for mastery, tension for focus. They spend years trying to outthink something that doesn't care. They call it progress. It's not. It's noise in disguise. The inner arena is where most traders die, not financially, but mentally. Not because they lack skill, but because they lack silence. The chart doesn't destroy them. Their need to control it does. They keep clicking, hoping for a sound that feels like certainty, but all they hear is their own heartbeat echoing through a battlefield that never existed. The truth. The market was never fighting you. You've been shadowboxing your own emotions. Every trade just gives the illusion of progress while your mind fights ghosts. This is the noise, the constant hum of fear and hope pretending to be logic, and it only stops when you realize that you don't need to fix it. You only need to see it, to step back, to listen, to breathe. Because this frantic pulse, this emotional storm, this endless cycle of reaction, this is where Livermore screams, and Douglas listens. Livermore says control every tick. Douglas whispers control nothing, observe everything. And you, the trader, stand in the middle, torn between two empires inside your mind, one built on fire, the other on air. Livermore speaks first, loud, certain, impossible to ignore. He says, you win by force. You don't wait for opportunity, you make it. His voice feels like adrenaline disguised as wisdom. It tells you that control is power, that domination is mastery, that success belongs to the one who acts without hesitation. He makes you believe that movement equals progress, that every pause is weakness, that the market rewards those who attack first. His energy electrifies you. He's the spark that got you into trading in the first place, the hunger, the ambition, the desire to prove that you can bend randomness into rhythm. But then, in the background, softer, like a breath that cuts through thunder, Douglas speaks. He doesn't shout. He doesn't argue. He simply reminds. You don't control the market. You control your reaction to it. His words are not a strategy, they're a mirror. He asks you to look, not at charts but at yourself. While Livermore says, fight uncertainty, Douglas whispers, make peace with it. And between those voices your mind becomes a battlefield. Every candle you watch, every decision you take, it's not analysis, it's a vote. A vote for chaos or calm, for control or clarity, for the illusion of power or the truth of acceptance. Livermore tells you to seize momentum, to catch every move, to never let opportunities slip. Douglas tells you to wait, to detach, to trust that missing a trade is better than forcing one. Livermore makes you feel alive. Douglas makes you feel free. But you can't have both, at least, not until you understand them, because both voices live inside every trader. One says, push harder. The other says, let go. And that tension between them, that's where your real war begins. You try to follow both at once. You tell yourself you'll be disciplined and aggressive, patient and ambitious. But the truth is, every moment in the market is a choice, Livermore or Douglas. React or reflect, attack or allow. You can't do both simultaneously because the state of mind required for one destroys the other. Livermore's voice builds pressure. It thrives on movement, speed, and the illusion that certainty can be forced through action. Douglas's voice releases pressure. It thrives on observation, stillness, and the faith that uncertainty can coexist with peace. One voice says, you must know. The other says, you don't need to. And your heart beats faster trying to decide which one to obey. That's the paradox of trading. It's not a skill war, it's a state of mind war. Every decision is filtered through whichever voice is louder at that moment. When Livermore wins, you're in control, but not calm. When Douglas wins, you're calm, but not in control. One gives you dominance, the other gives you detachment, and yet, both feel incomplete when isolated. You need Livermore's fire to enter the market, but you need Douglas's stillness to stay in it. You need Livermore's confidence to size up, but you need Douglas's surrender to accept what happens next. Without Livermore, you'd never take risk. Without Douglas, risk would consume you. Without Livermore, your account would stagnate. Without Douglas, your mind would shatter. This is the dual rhythm of trading, the pulse and the pause, the inhale and the exhale. You can't live without either, but you can die from choosing only one. Livermore's voice seduces you because it speaks the language of results. It talks in profits, in moves, in control. It promises victory, but it also feeds the ego, the part of you that equates being right with being worthy. Douglas's voice feels slower, quieter, and harder to follow because it doesn't give you control. It gives you peace, and peace doesn't produce dopamine. Peace doesn't spike your heart rate or flood your brain with hope. It just exists, silent, detached, almost invisible until you've lost it. That's why traders resist Douglas. Because surrender feels like weakness when you've built your identity on control. But Douglas knows surrender isn't quitting. It's clarity. It's removing yourself from the chaos so you can finally see the truth that control isn't real, that the market doesn't bend to your will, that your only weapon isn't prediction, it's perception. Livermore is the storm, Douglas is the sky, and you're the one who has to choose whether to be swept away or to watch the storm pass. But here's the secret. These two forces aren't enemies. They're halves of the same truth. The market requires both the courage to act and the wisdom to accept. Livermore gives you momentum, Douglas gives you balance. One expands, one centers. One builds, one sustains. Without one, you move too little. Without the other, you move too much. Mastery doesn't come from silencing either. It comes from knowing when to let each one lead. Livermore is your trigger finger. Douglas is your breathing. One without the other creates chaos or paralysis. Together, they create rhythm. A harmony that looks effortless from the outside but feels like discipline on the inside. But before that harmony exists, you must face the conflict. Because right now, they're not working together inside you. They're pulling you apart. You enter a trade with Livermore's voice shouting, "Go." Then, seconds later, Douglas whispers, "Let go." And you freeze. You hesitate, you exit too soon. You re-enter too late. You call it bad timing, but it's really internal dissonance. You're trading two philosophies in one body. You want to dominate and surrender at the same time. You want certainty and flow. You want control without chaos. You want freedom without fear. But you can't have one without dancing with the other. Every trader must make peace with this paradox, the need to act and the need to accept. Livermore says, act before you feel ready. Douglas says, you'll never need to act if you're truly ready. Both sound right. Both feel wrong depending on the moment, and so you swing between them. Overtrading in one breath, overthinking in the next. You're not inconsistent, you're human. Trading isn't about choosing between Livermore and Douglas, it's about integrating them. Let Livermore give you direction. Let Douglas give you duration. Let Livermore ignite your ambition. Let Douglas protect your peace. Because if you only listen to Livermore, you'll burn out chasing every move. If you only follow Douglas, you'll fade out waiting for perfection. But when you let them dance, when you act with aggression and observe with detachment, you enter a flow state. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop fearing loss. You start respecting it. You stop needing the market to prove you right. You start using it to refine who you are. That's when trading stops being survival and starts becoming mastery. The two voices don't disappear. They synchronize. Livermore still says, go. Douglas still whispers, wait. But now, they're not fighting. They're guiding. One gives the beat, the other sets the rhythm. And for the first time, the trader inside you stops being divided. For the first time, you hear both voices. And finally, they sound like one. You don't lose because of risk. You lose because you can't watch yourself be patient. You don't blow accounts because the market turns, you blow them because you can't stand still when it does. The truth is brutal, simple, and hard to swallow. It's not the market that punishes you. It's your reaction. Every blown trade isn't a failure of analysis, it's a failure of emotional control. You knew what to do. You just couldn't handle doing nothing. That's the disease that spreads through every trader's veins. The need to act, the need to feel in control, the addiction to movement. It feels like progress, but it's poison. You start out disciplined, rational, calm. Then one red candle turns into panic. One missed entry turns into revenge. You chase, you force, you add, you pray. You call it sticking to your edge. But it's not your edge, it's your ego. The ego that can't handle being wrong. The ego that would rather destroy itself than surrender to patience. You tell yourself, I'll get it back. You tell yourself, the setup's still valid. You tell yourself, just one more trade. But you're not trading anymore, you're negotiating with your own denial. You start to feel the burn, not from loss, but from realization. You realize how easily your control turns to chaos, how quickly discipline becomes desperation, how silence becomes noise the moment money's involved. You begin to see it. Your system isn't breaking down. You are. You're leaking energy through every emotional crack you refuse to seal. You're not trading a chart, you're trading your inability to stay still when it matters most. That's the cost of ego. It disguises itself as confidence until it empties your account and calls it experience. Every loss you've ever taken wasn't a market loss. It was a mental lapse. You didn't fail because the candle went red. You failed because you couldn't accept that it did. You turned data into drama. You turned a neutral event into a personal attack, and now you call that volatility. But the real volatility is in your own head. You see, chaos doesn't start on the screen. It starts in the space between your decision and your reaction. That's where fear lives. That's where hope grows. That's where every unlearned lesson hides. You tell yourself that patience is a strategy, but you treat it like punishment. You tell yourself that risk is part of the game, but you treat it like betrayal. You can't stand to wait because waiting feels like weakness. You can't stand to watch because watching feels like doing nothing. But that's the paradox. The market only rewards those who can watch without needing to win. You say you love trading, but deep down, what you love is the illusion that you can outthink uncertainty. You think you're mastering charts, but you're just decorating your anxiety with technicals. You think the market took your money, but the truth is, it only mirrored your mind. The market didn't move against you. It simply revealed you. Every spike exposed your impatience. Every fake out magnified your fear. Every win inflated your pride. Every loss stripped it bare. The market isn't chaos. It's a reflection of the chaos inside you. And that's the hardest truth to face. Because if you accept that, then every bad trade is your fault. Not because you misread the trend, but because you misread yourself. You want control, but control is the biggest illusion in trading. You think you can manage outcomes, predict reversals, bend probability, but all you're doing is fighting nature. The market is pure chaos dressed as structure. It rewards those who align with it, and it breaks those who try to own it. And you're trying to own it. You're trying to command a storm that doesn't listen. You're trying to win a game that can't be won, only played with grace. The moment you start forcing trades to prove your worth, you've already lost. Not because of the market, but because of yourself. Your bleeding self-respect with every impulsive click. You're trying to repair your confidence with risk. You're calling it courage, but it's compulsion. And it never works. Because every win earned from ego reinforces the behavior that destroys you. You win one revenge trade, and you think you've conquered chaos. But you haven't. You've just delayed the breakdown. You've just proven to your mind that emotion pays sometimes, and that's the most dangerous belief a trader can ever hold. You start to chase not the setup, but the feeling, the rush, the validation, the relief of being right again. But every emotional win is a loan against your future discipline, and the debt always comes due. You begin to spiral. You start doubling down, not on trades, but on illusions. You start needing the market to forgive you for being human. But it won't. It doesn't care. It only mirrors. And the reflection becomes unbearable when you can't hide from yourself anymore. That's when the real breakdown begins. Not when you lose money, but when you lose meaning. When trading stops being a game of skill and becomes a game of survival. When you stop analyzing setups and start analyzing yourself in the mirror at 3 a.m., asking, why can't I stop? That's not a market problem. That's a mind problem. You built your identity around being right, so every wrong tick feels like an attack. You built your confidence around control, so every loss feels like collapse. You thought discipline meant forcing order, but discipline is really the art of surrender. And you never learned to surrender. Did you? You learned to fight. You learned to resist. You learned to win. But nobody taught you how to lose gracefully. Nobody taught you how to let go without guilt. Nobody taught you that stillness can be strength. So when patience calls, you mistake it for fear. When silence arrives, you mistake it for emptiness. When uncertainty speaks, you drown it with action. You're not addicted to trading. You're addicted to avoiding yourself. The market just gives you an excuse. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You can't master the market until you've faced the part of you that can't stand to wait. You can't fix results until you've fixed reactions. You can't call yourself a trader if you're still at war with silence. Every account you've blown is just a record of unhealed emotions. Every loss you've repeated is just a loop of resistance you refuse to break. You say, "I'll learn next time." But learning requires stillness, and stillness terrifies you. Because in silence, there's no data to distract you from the truth. It's not your edge that's weak. It's your relationship with uncertainty. You want the market to validate your strength, but the market only reveals it. And the more you fight, the clearer it becomes. You never lose to the market. You lost to the version of yourself that couldn't let go. Every candle is feedback. Every loss is a mirror. The market only reflects your ability to stay still. You've blamed volatility, manipulation, bad luck, timing. But all of it was just your own reflection wearing different masks. The market isn't against you. It's showing you who you are when you face uncertainty. Every reaction you've had, every panic click, every premature exit, every over-leveraged entry, wasn't triggered by the market's movement. It was triggered by the story you told yourself about what that movement meant. The market doesn't make you emotional. It exposes that you already were. You thought you were trading price, but you were trading perception. The chart didn't scare you. You scared yourself with what you thought it implied. That's why every trader eventually hits this wall, the mirror moment. The point where you realize it's never been about predicting markets. It's been about perceiving yourself clearly enough to stop reacting. You stare at the screen and finally see it. The candles don't lie. They don't flatter. They don't manipulate. They simply reveal. They show you how patient you are, how disciplined you are, how detached you are. They record your psychology in real time, line by line. You can't hide from them. The chart doesn't care about your excuses. It's a perfect feedback loop. The more you resist, the louder it echoes. The more you surrender, the quieter it becomes. That's when it hits you. This was never about the market at all. It's about your ability to coexist with uncertainty without losing your center. Every spike is a test. Can you remain calm? Every fake out asks, can you stay objective? Every loss whispers, can you learn without judgment? The market isn't random. It's responsive. Not to your analysis, but to your awareness. It matches your internal state like a mirror matching your expression. When you're chaotic, it feels wild. When you're grounded, it feels predictable. When you're greedy, it teases. When you're fearful, it punishes. But none of that is about the market. It's about your projection. You keep trying to fix the mirror instead of fixing the face. You adjust indicators, timeframes, and tools. But the distortion isn't in the chart, it's in your lens. You're seeing through ego, not through truth, and ego bends reality to protect itself. It convinces you that the market is unfair, that you were close, that the setup failed. But deep down, you know the setup didn't fail, you did. Not in skill, but in state. You lost the moment you left observation and entered interpretation. You stopped seeing what is and started seeing what you want. That's when trading becomes emotional theater instead of mental clarity. But here's the paradox. The moment you realize this, everything starts to quiet down. You stop fighting price and start listening to it. You stop demanding outcomes and start understanding rhythms. You begin to notice that the market isn't unpredictable. It's just neutral. And neutrality feels like peace when you stop coloring it with your fears. The mirror moment strips you bare. It removes your excuses, your projections, your illusions of control. It forces you to look at yourself without filters. No mentor, no course, no setup can prepare you for that, because what you see in that reflection is raw, uncomfortable, and true. You see impatience wearing the mask of ambition. You see fear hiding behind analysis. You see self-doubt disguised as discipline. You see the child inside you begging for control because uncertainty feels like abandonment. You see the pattern you've been repeating over and over, hoping for a different outcome from the same emotion. And for the first time, you stop looking for strategies. You start looking for stillness, because you realize that no strategy can save a restless mind. You can't outsmart the reflection. You can only calm it. The market doesn't need to change. You do, not by trying harder, but by seeing clearer. You start to notice how your emotions rise and fall with price. You watch greed enter your thoughts like a thief disguised as confidence. You watch fear whisper, "Get out now," when nothing's wrong. And instead of reacting, you observe. You become the watcher of your own mind. That's when everything shifts. The chart that once looked chaotic begins to feel rhythmic. The same movements that once felt violent now look like breathing. Because for the first time, you're not inside the storm, you're watching it from above. You begin to trade not to prove, but to participate. You stop chasing perfection and start practicing awareness. You see that losses don't define you, they reveal you. Wins don't validate you, they reflect alignment. You finally understand what Douglas meant by, the market is neutral. It doesn't love you or hate you. It mirrors you. Every chart you open is a meditation on self-control. Every position you take is an exercise in acceptance. Every exit is a lesson in detachment. The mirror moment teaches you that mastery isn't about conquering chaos, it's about not becoming it. You start to see through Livermore's fire and Douglas's calm, and you realize both were right, but only when balanced. Livermore gave you action. Douglas gave you awareness. Together, they give you reflection. You stop labeling trades as wins or losses and start calling them feedback. You stop saying, "I was wrong," and start saying, "I was learning." You stop asking, "Why did the market do that?" and start asking, "Why did I react like that?" That's where transformation begins. Not in better predictions, but in deeper perception. Because once you master perception, outcomes take care of themselves. The mirror becomes your greatest teacher. Every session becomes a reflection exercise. Every emotion becomes data. Every loss becomes direction. And suddenly you stop fearing feedback. You start craving it. Because now the market isn't an opponent, it's a partner. It's not chaos, it's communication. It's not punishment, it's precision. It's showing you exactly where you need to grow. You don't lose anymore. You recalibrate. You don't fight anymore. You align. You don't chase anymore. You attract. The mirror moment isn't the end of trading. It's the beginning of mastery. Because you've finally realized that the real edge was never on the screen. It was always in your mind. It was never about prediction. It was about perception. The edge isn't in the chart, it's in the mind that reads it without needing to be right. You thought the secret was timing. You thought it was the setup, the risk, to reward, the perfect entry. But that's not where mastery hides. The hidden strategy, the one no trader saw coming, is not built on control, it's built on clarity. Because when you stop needing to be right, you finally start seeing what's real. Every losing trader tries to conquer the market. Every winning trader learns to cooperate with it. And that's the paradox that separates survival from mastery. You've spent years trying to predict what comes next. But prediction is just fear dressed as logic, the desperate need to escape uncertainty. Perception, though, that's power. It's the ability to see without distortion, to read without reacting, to let the market move and still remain unmoved. That's the hidden strategy, mastering your perception until the noise of the world cannot touch the stillness inside you. When you operate from that place, the chart becomes simple again, not because it changes, but because you do. You start to see patterns not as opportunities, but as expressions of rhythm. You start to sense momentum not as a signal, but as energy flow. You stop chasing price. You start aligning with it. The market stops feeling like an opponent and starts feeling like a conversation, one you no longer need to dominate to understand. The great illusion of trading is that the edge is external, that it lives in indicators, strategies, or data. But the real edge is internal. It's the ability to perceive reality without ego. That's the strategy no one saw coming, because everyone's been too busy looking outward to realize that mastery was inward all along. The traders who rise aren't the ones who predict the future. They're the ones who interpret the present without distortion. They don't need the market to move their way, they just need to move in sync with what is. That's not surrender. It's precision. The moment you stop trying to force outcomes, you start aligning with probability. You begin to feel rhythm instead of tension. You stop needing the market to validate your worth. You trade because you're in tune, not because you're in need. That's when everything changes. Suddenly, waiting isn't painful, it's powerful. Missing trades doesn't feel like loss, it feels like control. You no longer crave constant action because silence itself becomes strategy. You realize you don't need to predict what happens next, because you can respond to anything that does. That's real freedom, the kind no win or system can give you. The revelation hits you like lightning. The strategy you've been chasing wasn't hidden in complexity, it was hidden in simplicity. It's not about more tools. It's about less noise. It's not about more confirmation. It's about more clarity. It's not about knowing more. It's about needing less. The traders who survive aren't the ones who know the most. They're the ones who react the least, because every unnecessary reaction bleeds capital, energy, and focus. The more you react, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the easier it is for the market to destroy you. But when you move from perception, not prediction, you become unpredictable. You move with calm precision. You wait until the trade invites you, not tempts you. You don't chase entries. You let setups form like conversations unfolding. You don't impose your plan. You listen to the market's language until your move is obvious. That's the strategy no one teaches, because it can't be coded. It can't be backtested. It can only be embodied. It's the point where trading stops being a skill and becomes an art, where the chart becomes a mirror, the trade becomes a meditation, and your edge becomes your awareness. Livermore wanted control. Douglas sought acceptance. But the hidden strategy isn't one or the other. It's integration. It's realizing you need Livermore's precision and Douglas's peace at the same time. Action without attachment, confidence without rigidity, movement without noise. The real mastery is this: act like Livermore, think like Douglas, move with fire, see with calm, be sharp in execution but soft in expectation. That's the balance no one sees coming, because it's invisible on the chart but undeniable in results. Most traders lose not because they lack skill, but because they lack neutrality. The need to be right corrupts perception. The fear of being wrong poisons patience. But when you remove both, when you stop caring whether you're right and focus only on whether you're aligned, trading becomes effortless. You begin to see through illusion. You stop fighting your emotions and start using them as data. Fear becomes feedback. Greed becomes a signal. Doubt becomes a reminder to slow down. Every emotion that used to destroy you becomes a compass that guides you. That's the hidden strategy, the inner translation of chaos into clarity. You no longer need to eliminate emotions. You simply stop obeying them. You start using them as information instead of instruction. You notice fear rising before a trade, and instead of forcing confidence, you interpret it. Maybe it's not fear of loss, but fear of missing identity. Maybe it's not hesitation, but awareness that something doesn't feel aligned. You turn emotions into insight instead of interference. That's perception. You stop treating losses as punishment and start reading them as precision feedback. Every stop out becomes a calibration point, every mistake a mirror. And instead of hating yourself for them, you thank them, because they're the only reason you're still learning. The traders who rise aren't fearless. They're self-aware. They don't eliminate noise, they've just learned to listen through it. They don't silence their thoughts, they observe them until they dissolve. That's the strategy that doesn't look like one, because it's not mechanical, it's mental. The greatest traders aren't the most disciplined. They're the most detached. They're not addicted to control. They're addicted to clarity. They don't fight uncertainty. They operate inside it like surfers riding waves instead of engineers trying to stop the ocean. That's what Douglas meant by freedom, the ability to exist inside uncertainty and feel safe there. When you reach that level, nothing surprises you anymore. Not because you know what will happen, but because you've accepted that anything can. And that acceptance makes you invincible. That's when trading stops feeling like chaos and starts feeling like choreography. You're not reacting anymore, you're responding. You're not fighting movement. You're flowing with it. You're not surviving the market, you're dancing with it. And that's the strategy no trader saw coming: detachment as dominance. The moment you stop needing control, you gain it. The moment you stop chasing, opportunities start coming to you. The moment you stop proving, the market starts revealing. You begin to see that mastery isn't about eliminating uncertainty. It's about thriving within it. It's not about control, it's about connection. The market moves and you move with it, not against it. It whispers and you hear it, not with logic, but with awareness. The candles stop being random. They start speaking a language only calm minds can translate. You stop overtrading because silence feels better than chaos. You stop fearing losses because each one brings you closer to the truth. You stop looking for setups because your patience has become your strategy. The market becomes a mirror, a meditation, a teacher, and you, finally, become the student who listens. That's the revelation. The hidden strategy was never hidden. It was buried under your noise. It was waiting in your stillness. It was whispering every time you silenced your fear. You don't find it by searching harder. You find it by surrendering deeper. The chart was never your opponent. It was your reflection begging you to evolve. And now you see it clearly. Prediction was ego. Perception is mastery. Control was an illusion. Awareness is truth. You don't trade to win anymore. You trade to understand. You don't enter to prove. You enter to participate. You don't exit because you fear. You exit because you know. That's the strategy no one saw coming. Because it's not something you learn. It's something you become. When you trade from this place, profits follow, not as goals, but as byproducts of presence. You finally understand the final paradox of the market: the less you need, the more you gain. The quieter your mind, the louder your edge. The softer your grip, the stronger your control. The slower you move, the faster you grow. That's the hidden strategy, the strategy that lives inside you, not your charts. The one that can't be sold, taught, or copied. The one that begins the moment you stop trying to trade and start learning to see. When you stop needing control, control appears. When you stop fighting the wave, you surf it. That's the transformation, the shift from trader to observer. The moment you stop trying to bend the market, you start bending your perception. The storm doesn't end, you just stop being part of it. You begin to see the market not as chaos to survive, but as rhythm to align with. You stop chasing patterns and start recognizing flow. Every tick stops being noise, it becomes communication. Every candle isn't a test. It's a mirror showing how still you can stay while everything moves. This is where you become something new, the observer. The one who no longer reacts but reflects. The one who doesn't trade the market, but trades himself through the market. It's not cold detachment. It's conscious distance. The kind that gives you sight while others drown in emotion. You stop needing to predict because you're already prepared. You stop fearing loss because you understand its role. You stop forcing trades because you've mastered waiting. You've burned through the illusions of control and come out clean on the other side, calm, measured, awake. You start realizing that mastery isn't about being unshakable. It's about being fully aware of when you're shaking and choosing not to act on it. The observer within you sees every impulse rise and fade like waves on the surface of still water. Anger, greed, excitement, all appear, all pass. You don't fight them anymore, you let them flow through untouched. That's the power you've been chasing, not the absence of emotion, but the presence of awareness. You finally see that control isn't domination. It's discipline without tension. It's focus without fear. It's calm under fire. You've become the kind of trader who doesn't rush to prove, doesn't need to win every battle, because he's already won the war within. The transformation doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It arrives quietly, in the moment you skip a bad trade without regret, in the moment you stop checking the chart after entry, in the moment you feel peace even while in drawdown. That's when you know the observer has taken over. You've crossed the invisible line where most never reach, from needing outcomes to mastering process. You begin to see the entire market as energy, not enemy. Every rise and fall is part of a pulse that you now move with. And because you're in sync, everything feels slower, lighter, simpler. The same chaos that once overwhelmed you now feels predictable. Not because it's changed, but because you have. You don't seek to eliminate uncertainty anymore, you invite it. You don't hope for perfect setups, you create patience that makes every setup clear. You've become a different kind of trader. The kind who doesn't panic when candles spike, who doesn't flinch when trends reverse. You breathe through volatility like a surfer breathing through waves. The observer watches everything, entries, exits, emotions, but identifies with none. You can feel greed rising and still wait. You can feel fear tightening and still hold. You can feel euphoria calling and still walk away. Because you finally know you are not the thought. You are the awareness noticing it. That single understanding separates the master from the crowd. Most traders try to fix behavior without fixing identity. But once you shift from trader to observer, everything follows naturally. You no longer have to control yourself. You simply understand yourself. You don't suppress impulses, you dissolve them in awareness. That's how detachment feels. Not cold, but clear. The market becomes quieter, your reactions sharper, your confidence softer but unshakable. You trade with less effort and more precision. You're not reacting to price anymore. You're responding to alignment. You're not chasing opportunity, you're waiting for resonance. That's the Douglas within. The calm mind that sees without needing. Livermore's fire still burns in you, but now it's contained, directed. It no longer blinds you, it fuels you. Control and surrender are no longer enemies, they're dance partners. You act decisively but detach instantly. You execute with confidence but accept every outcome. That's the paradox of mastery. The observer acts but never reacts. You're still human. You feel you adapt. But now every move comes from awareness, not emotion. You've become immune to the market's manipulation because you've seen through your own. The traps that once pulled you, revenge trading, overconfidence, hesitation, no longer have grip. They still appear, but you recognize them instantly, and recognition is freedom. The observer doesn't need to destroy weakness, only to see it clearly. That clarity itself dissolves it. You no longer fight your shadow, you walk beside it. You no longer fear volatility, you breathe within it. You no longer crave certainty, you find beauty in its absence. This is the rebirth every trader chases but few reach. The moment trading stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror for self-awareness. You don't need to outperform others anymore. You just need to stay aligned with yourself. Every trade becomes a meditation, every mistake a message, every profit a quiet nod from the market saying, "You've learned to see." That's the transformation from chaos to clarity, from control to consciousness, from trader to observer. You've become what the market respects most, a mind it can't manipulate because it doesn't seek validation from it. You no longer ask, will I win? You ask, am I aligned? And when you are, you realize something profound. The observer always wins because he doesn't need to. The market doesn't care who wins, but your mind does. So ask yourself, will you keep chasing certainty or will you build clarity? Because every time you open that chart, the battle begins again. Not between you and the market, but between you and you. The impulsive you vs the patient you. The fearful you vs the focused you. The one who reacts vs the one who observes. Every trade isn't about profit, it's a mirror. Every loss isn't punishment, it's reflection. The market keeps asking you one question over and over: can you stay conscious while everything tempts you to lose control? And most can't. Most traders break not because they lack skill, but because they can't survive their own reflection. They chase control when they should surrender. They surrender to emotion when they should stay still. They want certainty in a game built on uncertainty. But not you, not anymore. You've seen through it now. You've walked through Livermore's fire and Douglas's calm. You've broken, burned, rebuilt, and merged. You've learned that the real edge isn't out there, it's in here. In how you breathe before a decision. In how you wait when nothing moves. In how you hold when everything screams to exit. The market doesn't reward those who chase, it rewards those who see. And now you see. You see that trading is not a sprint toward money, it's a pilgrimage toward mastery. You see that every chart pattern is a lesson in awareness, every hesitation a test of patience, every emotion a doorway to discipline. You don't fight the market anymore, you learn from it. You don't demand outcomes, you align with them. You no longer crave to be right, you crave to be clear. So here's your final challenge: will you keep chasing signals, or will you train your mind? Will you keep searching for systems, or will you build awareness? Will you keep fearing uncertainty, or will you step into it, knowing that's where your evolution begins? Because the trader who conquers himself conquers every market. The trader who tames his emotions commands infinite edges. The trader who learns to see clearly doesn't need to predict, he knows how to respond. So stop fighting the noise, stop running from fear, stop trying to control everything and start controlling yourself. That's where real freedom lives. That's where growth begins. The market doesn't owe you clarity. You earn it by mastering your perception. You've been training for this from the first loss, the first mistake, the first moment you refused to quit. Now you understand the greatest trade you'll ever take is the one where you stop fighting the market and start mastering yourself.